Hello and welcome everyone for joining us to another episode of the Cultured Nerd Podcast. This week, episode 15, we're going to talk about what happened at D23 over the weekend. We had some brand new news coming from Kevin Feige, dropping apparently interviews after interviews, kind of hinting at Daredevil being a reboot. And then everyone and their mom apparently got upset over the lack of any real reveals at D23 because apparently some scoopers have been telling everyone that there was going to be this massive casting announcement, and that clearly did not happen. So let's get into it and let's talk. Boom. So, did you catch any of D23 over the weekend, or did you?
I saw some of it. I saw I saw the official announcements that came from it. I wasn't looking for anything that wasn't there. I thought that they showed a bunch of nice things. I also thought that they showed all the things that we thought they were going to show. I felt like this was everything that was par for the course.
Yeah, I mean, it had some announcements. I mean, Marvel side-wise, it had some announcements. We saw Werewolf by Night get announced, and that seems so weird that it could be a lot of fun. Especially because it's like announced, it's coming out in just a few weeks, which is kind of super cool. They just like quietly filmed this entire sea-level film, and there it is.
It feels like the horror genre fits in so nicely. I feel like maybe WandaVision, which was not a horror show, but like had some of those elements. I feel like it's a very easy go-to thing. And I also feel like our last Mummy show was also kind of a spooky show. So maybe they're just like in that spooky season right now.
Maybe. And one of the comments popped up, is Werewolf by Night going to be a comedy? I feel like it kind of going to teeter that line a little bit. Definitely looks like they're going to embrace the camp, but they're also trying to embrace that genre of horror film that doesn't exist anymore, like the old Boris Karloff style of movie. And super weird about the whole thing was that we saw in the preview, Man-Thing is making his MCU debut, which was kind of cool. He's like the Marvel version of Swamp Thing in a very basic way. And a longtime Academy Award-winning composer, Michael Giacchino, the guy who composed like Lost, so many things. Star Wars Rogue One. He did the Academy Award-winning work for Coco. He did the Star Trek movies. Like he's very well known. He did the music for Doctor Strange. He's making he's directing this, which is super weird that he's just jumped over from being the Academy Award-winning composer. It'd be like John Williams coming up and directing an episode of Lost or something. You know, it's something super obscure for him to like. Why are you doing this? But here he is.
Is it a movie or is it a mini series?
They said it's a special, so I'm assuming it's gonna be like a 90-minute movie at most.
Okay. And then where do they plug in the werewolf? Where does he go? Is he going to go on a team?
So the long, big standing rumor, and this is kind of one of those rumors that is unlike the rumor we're going to talk about today. There's a long standing rumor that one of the big things that Marvel was gearing toward was like the addition of Blade and Moon Knight and all those characters, is they're essentially making the Midnight Suns to be like their defenders for the Disney Plus kind of thing. Like they're setting up this little team event. They're bringing up a bunch of supernatural characters. Werewolf by Night being a character that was also like very heavy with Moon Knight's lore is now probably going to be on that team, or maybe just part of what they're hunting. Who knows? But it could be a lot of fun. I think if they do it right, it could be the right amount of campiness, which you don't see a lot of nowadays. And they embrace the camp.
Do they introduce vampires in this werewolf doc that Blade then will fight when we see Blade? Because vampires have to also be real if Blade is a thing.
100%, yeah. I could see it being very simple, like having like the Sorcerer Supreme Wong coming up and saying, we have some issues and we need a supernatural team. And there goes, you have Moon Knight, who's well versed with fighting supernatural beings. You've got Blade, who hunts them down. You've got the Black Knight, who's teaming up with Blade. Obviously, he's probably going to show up too. You're probably going to see, the first time we'll see Ghost Rider is probably going to be there. We're probably going to see other characters, maybe even the Punisher. They may bring him back onto that one. But I could see it very well being just one of those, like, it's not going to work as a movie, but let's do it as like a Defender style miniseries.
What are they doing with Ghost Rider? Are we
Nothing.
getting?
That's the thing. They haven't done anything with Ghost Rider solely because they can't really use them for films because of China's weird anti-skull mandate. So you can't, like, if you want the movie to open in China, you can't feature a character like that. So they probably are just like, let's put him in a miniseries and maybe reference him in Secret Wars, but not really show him. Like, they're probably going to do something like that, where he's going to be too busy to fight in the Secret Wars, but he's around.
Has there ever been a version of Ghost Rider that wore a mask that covered the skull?
I think the closest thing we're probably going to get is the version of Ghost Rider that we saw in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
The guy with the car, because his skull wasn't like a skull. It had like this weird like helmet that went over part of it. We might get that, or just a dramatic reimagining of the character, which is what it is. But kind of going into the topic at hand, I mean, Marvel dropped some major details of Daredevil Born Again, which was a show that people have been campaigning for since the show Daredevil ended on Netflix. And to literally no one's surprise, because I've been saying this for years, is that this show is not a continuation of that show. I think the direct quote, I posted a few times, there was a direct quote from Charlie Cox who flat out said that this is not season 4. And let me find the exact quote. My feeling is, based on the title Born Again, I think that the sense is that it is a new beginning. It's going to be different. It is going to be totally different. It's going to be new stories and new ideas. It's a season 1. It is not a season 4. So it's a whole new thing, which is the way to go. If you want to do it again differently. And that kind of like finalized it for a lot of people. They realized, holy crap, this is a soft reboot. But on that same note, I mean, people who watch Daredevil religiously on Netflix realize that show and what is Kingpin's appearance in Hawkeye didn't really mesh up together. Like in Hawkeye, he comes out and no one really knows who he is. I mean, he's obviously Kingpin is known to Hawkeye because he was hunting down the underworld. But what did you have in the end of Daredevil? Like, Daredevil publicly was attacked by another Daredevil who was hired by Kingpin, and the FBI was arresting Wilson Fisk. So how did he go from being on every news screen to being nobody's heard of him again? Like, there was a kind of a weird change in the character's backstory there. And the fact that he's obviously dramatically stronger. He was able to rip car doors off.
They have to bump him up to MCU strength. Yeah. They have to. The other guy, we saw him get tired in a hallway. You know what I mean? Yeah. That show is so great because of all of those really great those choreographed scenes, those scenes that feel like they're out of the raid, but you're getting it with the superhero. Right. He's got to be able to punch. He has to go toe to toe with Spider-Man, at least Spider-Man. So do you think his origins are, I mean, we're probably going to get a new kid, right? Not a new kid. We're still getting Charlie Cox, but his backstory is going to be much like older Daredevils, correct?
Possibly. So kind of what Andy is bringing up here in the chat. Here's how I look at it. Is Daredevil Born Again retconning seasons 1 through 3? No, they just don't have to retread on it. They have to focus on new stories, and the past still exists in the background, which is a good assessment. However, what I was told by everyone I've talked to is that what Kevin Feige wanted to do was essentially reboot everything that he didn't like about what Jeff Loeb did at Netflix, recast certain people, keep certain people, but redo a lot of the stuff. And essentially, he wants to treat the Netflix verse, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. verse, all of those things as a variant timeline that can exist in the greater MCU because of the fact that we now have the multiverse. But it's not strictly beholden to this new show, because this new show is going to tread very similar territory, but they're also going to retell what they want to retell when it's necessary. It's kind of like a new writer coming on a book and saying, I didn't like what the last guy did about this, so let's retcon it a little bit and just kind of treat it like that. But luckily, thanks to Loki, we have the term variant and we can do whatever we want. And that's what he's doing.
It also feels that Daredevil is going to be the sourdough starter for all of these other shows. I feel like Daredevil is going to be the thing that latches on to everything and connects everything, which kind of also explains why I think the show is so long. I think we're going to get a number of team up episodes. I think we're going to get the She-Hulk episode. We are going to get the episode where Daredevil goes to hang out with Wong. I think we get all of those things because we need to seed him into all of those words. Ooh,
right.
Maybe Shang-Chi shows up and Daredevil goes toe-to-toe with him somewhere, and he's like,
that'd be a fun fight to see.
That'd be a great fight to see.
But like, I think that kind of the point is that, like this comment here, Marvel has the capacity to be gritty. Winter Soldier was one example. If Daredevil can go to that level, I'd be happy. And I'm the same way. Like, a lot of people think that Daredevil being soft rebooted means... Did I lose you, Michael?
Nope, I'm still here. Sorry.
Okay. A lot of people think that when Daredevil being soft rebooted means that we're going to get Daredevil in Taika Waititi's Thor Ragnarok or Thor Love and Thunder. We're not getting that. By the way, I watched Thor Love and Thunder over the weekend, and I was so upset. It was such a trash movie.
It's a kid's movie. It's for
But it's
kids.
not, though. That's the problem.
Nope, there's a whole bunch. They're telling him a bedtime story. There's a bunch of kids in a wagon. That's a kid's movie.
It's a kid's movie. It's for teenagers who haven't matured past the age of 10. That's what that movie's for.
They got meat. They got screaming goats. They got everything you want in there.
It had some moments that were fantastic, and it had some moments that I just wanted to scream at the TV. Like, I could see where Marvel had laid the groundwork for this amazing, dark, awesome story. And then Taika's like, I want to add some comedy here. And just, he kept inserting nonsense. Because the intro with Gore the God Butcher, that whole 10-minute intro, amazing. The whole movie should have been that tone. But for Gore the God Butcher, he didn't butcher any gods. He showed up, killed one on screen, and then you heard about him doing stuff, and then he was kind of taken away.
I also wish for that movie that they would have stuck to the script. I feel like they do a lot of improvised takes, and they kind of take the best of each take, but sometimes that leaves your movie feeling discombobulated, right? Yeah. Sometimes the choices that are happening in those scenes. I thought it was a great double Thor movie. Thought Natalie Portman did a great job. I thought so too. Right? There's great stuff in it, but like, it's to lead to the next Thor thing where Thor is now a dad.
Yeah.
I mean, I apologize. It's funny to say. I forget if you haven't seen it, I apologize, but it's
spoiler alert.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like this was the transition into him being like a kid movie now.
Yeah. And we all saw how that didn't work in countless times. I mean, you and I, when we were kids, we saw The Mask of Zorro, right? Amazing movie. I will to this day fight it as being one of the best superhero movies of that era of superhero movies. And what failed about the second movie was that it was a kid's movie. They introduced his son as a primary protagonist, and the movie got cheesy. It's like when The Mummy came out, and that was amazing. And then The Mummy 2 came out, and the kid was front and center. And you're like, why? Why do you keep injecting these children into these stories and destroy it?
And mind you, you can inject kids into movies. Steven Spielberg put a kid into Indiana Jones, and they had to make a new rating system because the movie was so much more terrifying than what a PG movie was. You can do these adult stories. Unfortunately, they did not do that with Thor.
No. And it was frustrating because you had the introduction to Gore, which was a fantastic introduction. You had the introduction of Natalie Portman's character, her dealing with cancer, going through chemo, all of that stuff, getting the hammer, everything was great. And then you had this really, it felt like they filmed it in like an afternoon in the back lot of someone's like, just their backyard or something, where they did all the backstory, love story between Jane and Thor. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like a budget. Like, this seems like a soap opera being put in a $200 million movie. It seemed so tonally weird, and it felt like it just didn't fit in the same movie. And
question,
it was, I don't know.
Was any of that footage filmed for another movie? Because some of it felt like
right?
Yeah, it felt like maybe B stock from Thor 1 or 2 that we never got or something. Not the silly stuff, but like some of those shots, I felt like maybe it was on film and now we're on these red cameras. Maybe that's why it looked differently. Yeah, there was a tone difference there for sure.
It was weird. And there were some moments were just absolutely fantastic. I thought like when Thor was fighting all those raccoon people or whatever they were, the owl people, That scene was dumb fun and it was really pretty to watch. But then it like shifted over to that scene where he's like romantic comedy Thor, and I felt like it's just a different director took over. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like it's the same person's eye. What's going on here? But on that note, like a lot of people think that Daredevil Born Again is going to be of that vein, where he's going to make these comments or these jokes about his eyesight, or oh, I can't see this, or I wish I could see you. But any of those stupid, cheesy campiness that we saw in Thor: Love and Thunder, I think people are expecting that, but that's not what's going to happen. They have 18 episodes to really re-establish this character, because if it was a sequel, if it was a season 4, they would do it in the standard 8 episodes. But they're trying to take their time because they're trying to reboot the character and make everyone very aware that it's a reboot.
And also, from what I can remember of when I watched Daredevil on Netflix, isn't he fighting ninjas right now? Like, wouldn't you have to start off, like you'd have to go in a different direction? Going back to the topic at hand, D23, you can very clearly see where they're going. We're getting weird monsters right now, which is then going to lead into, because I don't think Fantastic Four is going to be monsters anymore. No. I think that's when we go to cosmic. That's when we go to,
like, we're not going to see the Mole Man in that movie. We're going to see like a Nihilus or something. Like that's what we're going to get.
Yeah. Probably leading up to Dr. Doom.
Oh, 100%. If you're going to have a Secret War project, you have to have a firm established Reed Richards and a firmly established Dr. Doom. Like,
now that was another thing that got shown. They showed the trailer for Secret Invasion.
Yes.
Why did the trailer look boring to me, Taylor?
Because it didn't give anything away. I think the problem is that the trailer basically was like, if you know what the story is, you'll be like, okay, I see what they're doing. But if you don't know what's going on, it just seemed like a lot of talking and a lot of like, oh, look, there's squirrels. And there's this dude there's 20 of these dudes. But they told you almost nothing with that trailer. And I think in the age of Marvel MCU, and we see like half the movie in the trailer, it was a very serious, different trailer.
And then they didn't show the Thunderbolts, but they announced them, right? And we kind of know who the team is.
Yes, but they didn't tell us the whole team. And that's the funny part, is that a lot of people say, oh, the Thunderbolts are here. And I think the funniest comment that I saw about the Thunderbolt announcement was that you have 6 characters, and 5 of those characters essentially have the same power.
Beat people up.
You got Ghost, which is the only real meta-human, essentially. And then you've got U.S. Agent, Winter Soldier, Red Guardian, all literally the same. Same power, same skill set, same everything. Then you've got Black Widow and Taskmaster, which essentially are 2 Black Widows.
They're two lady Black Widows.
Yeah. So I think the reason why they showed us that group and not the whole team is probably because we're going to get Emil Blonsky as the Abomination, but they want us to be invested in the story that we're seeing in She-Hulk before we see him get picked up. Like, they don't want to spoil the show and then be like, oh, by the way, Abomination's going to clearly break his parole and work for these guys. Spoilers, it's going to be the final episode where they talk about it.
Right.
But then you've also got Zemo, who's probably going to show up too, because or maybe that's what they're going for. Maybe part of their mission is they're going to break into Wakanda and take Zemo. Like, I could see that being a big plot point.
That would be great. I totally forgot about Zemo. We spent so much time with him, and now he's just in Nowhereville, sitting in a hut somewhere.
Yeah, he's locked up in Wakanda jail. But I don't know.
What was the other big announcement?
Other than so they had the big announcement. They had Secret Wars, which is going to like be a mini series about the Skrulls, and like where they're finally going to kind of retcon the Skrulls in a way. Like, my big issue with the Captain Marvel movie was that you focused on this group of like maybe 100 Skrulls, and they were good guy Skrulls, but it felt like it was very much them trying to say that, like, it was kind of like a symbolism, like, this is Middle Easterns and the Skrulls are the Al-Qaeda, but these are the good ones. Like, that's what it felt like. It was really heavy-handed, and I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing, I get it. But to me, and the comics as a whole, the Skrulls were like essentially space Nazis. There was never any one of them that were good. They were just all bad. That's who they were.
They have not shown them at all as space Nazis.
Right.
They are sympathetic, and there's a couple of bad apples.
Right. And so what we're going to see is the bad Skrulls. And you're going to see that these bad Skrulls have been coming around to Earth since the 90s when the good Skrull showed up. And they've been infiltrating every aspect of society. So you're going to see like politicians being revealed as Skrulls. You're going to see members of S.H.I.E.L.D. that hear Skrulls. Like you're going to see a bunch of stuff popping up as Skrulls, and it's going to be this crazy system. And I think it's going to wow people in a way. And the other reveal was that the Armor Wars is going to segue right off of Secret Invasion, which to me ties up that loose end with Sharon Carter, I think Sharon Carter, of being like how she's now the bad guy in the Winter Soldier show. She's going to go after the armor tech, and apparently the Skrulls are somehow involved in that too, or maybe Nick Fury is. But the fact that they announced that show is going to be like the follow up raises a lot more questions, which I thought was pretty cool. The other big thing was I think they announced just a handful of Disney stuff, which was just Disney. I mean, Disney being Disney, that's fine.
Right.
Get a Werewolf by Night. Let me think. So let's just go right into the next topic, honestly.
Well, I was about to say, the next topic is there was things that weren't announced at D23 that I guess people wanted to be announced and were upset. So, I mean, I don't know. How else would you explain it? Taylor, take it away.
It's pretty funny, to be honest. There was I'm trying to find the original post because I'm pretty sure that guy like deleted it. Okay, here we go. Nope, found it. Hi. Twitter doesn't hide things. So this guy by the name of Emmett Kennedy dropped this report on September 1st. He put it, this guy is he's a verified Twitter user, right? So he's got like some clout and all that. But what he's a sports commentator. Like he's in that avenue. So like he moved lanes completely to drop this information. And the tweet said, "I am reliably informed that Marvel Studios has signed epic talent for Phase 5. John Boyega, which we know as Finn from Star Wars, Henry Cavill, DC's Superman, Jodie Comer." If you don't know who Jodie Comer is at this point, what have you been doing? I mean,
she's from Killing Eve. She's from Free Guy. She did the Ridley Scott movie, which is bad, but she's good in it. She's in lots of things.
Yeah, I mean, most people will know her from Free Guy, but that's what it is. You got Daisy Edgar Jones, John Krasinski, Giancarlo Esposito, and then Denzel Washington. And they announced this big thing, and he basically said Fantastic Four, She-Hulk, X-Men. And basically said that, okay, the Fantastic Four being Henry Cavill, Jodie Comer, and John Boyega, with John Krasinski. Apparently he's returning, right? And then you had Denzel Washington and Giancarlo as Professor X and Magneto. And then you had all this stuff that all this speculation, and it kind of like everyone and their mom believed it, leading up to everything, right? And the irony of it all was that none of that happened. Not a single mention, not even a casting. The funniest thing about it was that when they announced the new director for Fantastic Four, they even said no casting has taken place because we're waiting for the director to find his cast. And like, to that, everyone was like, "Oh, so it's not even started yet," right? Because the reality is that Marvel has this tendency of casting certain roles when they need to, right? They Mahershala Ali, they cast him as Blade so they could lock him into a contract, and they knew he was going to be Blade. But certain characters, they wanted the director to have the say in, and the Fantastic Four, they needed a director, and they just got him. And it was so funny that people were like, "Oh, Henry Cavill is going to be Mr. Fantastic. Oh, Henry Cavill is going to be Doctor Doom. Oh, Henry Cavill is going to be the Sentry. Oh, he's going to be Hyperion. Oh, he's going to be," and they kept speculating what he was going to be. And all the while, Henry's just wrapped up Witcher season 3 filming just like this last couple of days. And again, word on the street is that he's back as Superman. So, okay, everybody, believe what you want to believe, but.
Well, and I think this is a good transition from us talking about Thor: Love and Thunder. Batman went to the MCU and played a bad guy, and Christian Bale, of all people, got back into superhero movies. So when I hear that list of people, I hear a dream list of some executive that would love to get those people. And I bet, based on no information at all, 1 out of 6 of those people are going to be in the MCU.
Yeah.
Disney is the biggest player in town. They make 5 of these movies a year, and they're superhero based. They're absolutely going to get these people.
100%.
But just like Taylor and I talked about last week and the week prior, these big actors are under contract and are under contract for other things. We just talked about, and pretty sure Henry Cavill is going to come back as Superman. And if that's the case, then he's not signing anything for the next year, period.
He's busy with Netflix and Warner Brothers.
And when I hear you talk about the Killing Eve girl, yes, she'd be a great Sue Richards, but she could be anybody in the MCU. There are
100%.
so many options, and she is so talented that I feel like when we pigeonhole ourselves into these, like, this is our wish list, I don't know, because the executives, I mean, my fear is that they're going to burn all these people off in a nightmare sequence like they did John Krasinski.
Yeah, but the reality is, like John Krasinski, I told this to hundreds of times now. John Krasinski joining the MCU for that cameo in Doctor Strange was literally them saying, "Yes, we hear you," and this is all we could get, because John is so busy with his 1,000 Quiet Place projects that he has with Paramount that he was only able to do that, and that's probably all he's going to do for them. But the Hollywood Reporter ran this fantastic article literally the next day. And I sent it to you earlier. And my favorite line was right in the middle of the thing. Earlier this month, a man running a Twitter account mostly known for sports commentary and racing podcasts claimed he had been reliably informed that list that I told you would all be announced, be joining the MCU by Kevin Feige at D23. The tweet amassed 14,000 likes, was shared and reshared across the internet. Fans tried their hardest to pair up the actors with likely characters they might be playing. Fan art was made, YouTube videos were uploaded, and small yet confidently smug feuds began on Twitter over whether X actor could fit or age or X character, blah, blah, blah. Like the Twitter wars that existed between, I don't believe for a second that Denzel Washington will be a good Magneto. And like that feud was probably one of the funniest things I've seen. I personally believe he wouldn't make a good Magneto in the sense that Magneto is supposed to be a Jewish boy in World War II. Denzel Washington doesn't scream a Jewish boy from World War II. But if they're reinventing the character, sure. But oddly, like regardless, the internet exploded, right? Family members texted me asking if I had heard about this list of Oscars was true. So how many of the accounts talent was confirmed at D23? None. Zero. Not a single one. Because none of it was true. And that was the reality of it, was that, like you said, this guy probably got some executive's wish list, thought it was fact, and ran it like it was fact.
So I know why people ran with this, because they wanted this to be true. I know, I can see that part of it. This makes me go back and think about the Zack Snyder bots. Those 14,000 people are not bots. Those are people that want this thing to be real, because if there was bots behind this, it would have been triple those numbers, and these accounts would have been nonsense accounts. Yeah. These are all people that wanted this thing to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So does this ruin any of these actors' possibilities of getting into the MCU?
Possibly. And the reason is, so rewind back a handful of years. My buddy Ryan Unicomb, the one who frequently pops into these chats and says he's mowing the lawn, he had heard from a casting individual at Warner Brothers about a wish list that Matt Reeves had for his Batman project. He had a list of characters, he had a list of actors that they were with those characters, and they kind of brought up this concept that directors tend to, when they write their stories, they tend to imagine certain actors in the roles when they write the role, because that's how you get into that mindset of a character. You imagine a person, and then that's what you do. Like when you're reading a comic book, for instance, when you read a comic book, does every single character have the voice in your head, or do you assign actors to these characters? And that's what everyone does when they write. So you had characters like Vanessa Hudgens as Catwoman, right? Listed off. You had Robert Pattinson as Batman. That one happened, which was fantastic. You had Josh Gad as Penguin. You had all these different characters that were listed up, and only one of them happened. And in fact, I heard from a few people that because of the announcement that happened when Ryan put it out on the internet, and all these people started flocking to it. Oh, Vanessa should be Catwoman. Vanessa should be Catwoman. It apparently ruined all of her chances of becoming Catwoman.
Right.
Because not only did she hear the news, but she also started campaigning for it. And the studios are like, no, this is stupid. And they kind of just like, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to do a different route. But the reality is that you have these feuds. You have the internet basically saying, this guy would be a terrible Professor X, or this guy would be a terrible Magneto. And you have all of the toxicity that comes from people not explaining themselves, right? Because most people say, oh, I don't want this. And people just chalk it up, oh, it's because he's black and you're being a racist. But the reality is, sometimes it has very little to do with that. It has to do with the fact that the character embodied as they are doesn't fit what that actor could bring to it unless they're retooling the entire character. And if they're going to retool that entire character, is it even the same character? So a lot of people objected for that reason. But
I guess it's not.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I guess it's not the character. Yeah. I mean, we always say it's the MCU. I guess it's the MCU version and the other versions you want. I mean, it's an unsatisfactory thing, but I feel like that's what it is because we're not getting all incarnations. There's been, take Daredevil. There's been some very adult incarnations of Daredevil. We're not going to get that. You know what I mean? We're going to get somewhere between a Spider-Man and a Daredevil. Okay. So if we can't predict who these things are going to be, how do you report on rumors, or do you not report on them until they wait till the event happens?
Most of the time, it's very tricky because we've talked about this before in a different show where we talked about how blindly trusting into scoopers is such a toxic thing to do because on one hand, sometimes they're right. Sometimes they get something accurate and you can believe that. But the part of the scooping culture that I could not stand is that when your source runs dry, when the information runs dry, and you have people expecting answers, expecting information, expecting these, and especially if you have a financial gain on it, scoopers often will sacrifice their integrity to get the clicks. And they will treat gossip as fact, or they will treat rumor as fact, or they'll treat wish lists or fan casting as rumors. And they mince things together because they have to provide. And
as you were talking about that, I was thinking about how exciting that guy's phone was that day. He got 14,000 likes. His phone blew up all afternoon. Other accounts wanted to get in contact with him and find out, what do you know? How did you come? I mean, what a big boom to your business. And it turned out to be fake.
Yeah. But at the same time, he probably got 14,000 people who liked it. And now he's appearing in their feeds rent-free.
Right.
And maybe of that 14,000, maybe 1,000 of them will actually stick around to follow his sports stuff. And if that's the case, then he just gained 1,000 new followers.
Right.
He alienated another 13,000, but at least he got 1,000 more. And like Andy brought up right here, this is why the scooping game is exhausting for me to watch. I stick mainly to just confirming with the studios and networks before sharing anything. Exactly. If I were to tell people what I hear on a daily from my contacts in like VFX teams and whatnot, people would be like, oh my God, why aren't you talking about this? Why aren't you talking about this? Blah, 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 blah. Like, because at this point, because Hollywood is a living thing and it changes from 1 second to the next. What's true right now will not be true in 10 minutes because that's how the game is.
Look at what happened with Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, everything was Batgirl was going to hit the world on Monday. And then on Tuesday, the new owners took over and that's it. I mean, you know what I mean?
Nope. We need the money because we're house poor. So we need to gut this thing. But that's the thing is like, so you can't always trust scoopers. And like I said, if your entire reputation online is built off of scooping and you don't have anything to scoop anymore, then you're left with either your opinions on things that are being announced or your commentary on rumors that have no validity to them. So
yeah, and you pointing out that Fantastic Four just got a director right now means that they probably haven't even started the script yet. Or maybe they have some ideas in mind.
Oh, they do.
You think they have the script done?
No, because Kevin Feige has said that he typically has an outline for almost every project before they announce it. And that's what, I mean, as we saw with Thor Love and Thunder, you can see that there was a dark outline And then you can see Taika changing everything as he was filming. So 100%, they already have a script treatment out there. They're probably still going to hire a script writer to flesh that treatment out into a movie, but they have an outline. They know who the villain's going to be. They know what the key points are, but they're still going to need to write the rest of it. So that much is done.
Do you think other Phase 5 scripts are also in that process yet? Okay.
100%, because Marvel has a tendency of laying down groundwork when they know what they're getting to before they just do. They don't just tease things for the sake of teasing them. They lay it out because they know what they know the payoff. And
well, in She-Hulk, we just saw regular Hulk in a spaceship. Where's he going?
Back to Sakaar, because they're setting up a World War Hulk project that is more than likely going to see its key details being introduced in Captain America: New World Order, because the leader is going to be the main villain. And undoubtedly, if the leader's a villain, some of the villains in that show are going to be introduction of some new hulking powered villains, which are probably going to come into the World War Hulk storyline. And then you have She-Hulk doing her thing, and you're probably going to get, since Thunderbolt Ross is passed away in real life, they're probably going to pass him away on screen, and you're probably going to get someone taking up the mantle and becoming the Red Hulk for the MCU. That's not Ross. Or maybe it'll be Betty. Maybe she comes back and she's pissed that Hulk never called her back. And you're going to see her come back as the Red She-Hulk like she was in the comics. But they're gearing toward something very specific, and they've already set the groundwork for it. Because that's how Marvel rolls.
So now these actors are in jeopardy. Not in jeopardy, but it means that there's this list. So now they feel like they have to zig when people are, they have to swerve this way because people swerve that way. Do you think we feel the fallout from this right away, or do you think we don't find out about the real fallout until 2 years from now?
I don't think we're ever going to find out the real fallout. The real fallout is just going to be, so they're not in the MCU at all. And that's going to be the real fallout, is that we probably will see maybe one of these people, and that's it. And someone will be like, oh, he got one. But the reality is, it's kind of like how Joe Manganiello got the role of Deathstroke. Fan casted him as Deathstroke to the point where the studio thought that was kind of a cool idea, and they put him in it.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to get one or two of these people who are like, oh, yeah, that could have been a cool idea. But on the same note, people were saying that John Boyega was going to be playing Johnny Storm, and that was the exact same thing that the Fantastic Four reboot that Fox had done.
Yeah.
And fans went to it so poorly that they're probably not going to make that same mistake. So
that movie's really bad, though.
The first half of it is great. Second half is a dumpster fire.
It jumps the shark. It's so crazy that it could have been such a thing. You know what I mean? On paper, it all looks like it should work. And as I was watching it, I'm like, boy, look what you guys did. This is what you did.
It was funny because you watch that movie and you're like, okay, I'm into it. I like this. And then like when they get their powers and you see the massive reshoots happen, I'm like, oh no, everything sucks now. Like, give me that first half is a great movie. Second half, where they took away the director's ability to direct the movie, yeah, it was a dumpster fire.
Well, and it's also crazy that like Sue Richards never says anything till the thing until like the last 10 minutes of the movie. I mean, the lack of foresight on that movie. And is that because of reshoots?
So the movie that the director had prepared was hard PG-13, probably low rated R. And they did not like the direction. They thought it was too dark. So they wanted him to retool it, and they retooled it for him, and it just went to shit.
So. It blows my mind. I mean, I don't know. If it's crazy that it's taken this long to get Fantastic Four and X-Men, but it feels like it takes this long to build up to that world, because this will be the next Marvel worlds that we live in moving forward once we are done with the multiverse. Right.
Yeah, like the comment, sigh, 1 year later. That was the moment that movie the director lost his control in that movie. And that was such a sad realization, because when you see the movie, you see the reshoots, you see the weird rigs, you see the weird tone shift, you see the weird camera work, the inconsistencies in the costumes. You see a lot of stuff that was blatantly changed. And a lot of it had to do with Marvel. A lot of it had to do with that. Like the X-Men Dark Phoenix, on its initial cut, amazing. But they lost 30, 45 minutes of that movie because of the merger and Marvel not wanting them to use Skrulls. So they had to take out all the backstory for the aliens. They had to add a random reshoot where they give them a different name, but they're still the Skrulls, essentially. And a vastly superior depiction of the Skrulls once you realize that they are the Skrulls.
It's a really great bad movie. Like the bad stuff in the movie is really awful, but the good stuff is so good.
Like that train fight was probably one of the best X-Men scenes in the X-Men franchise.
And it was supposed to be in space and they knocked the budget, so they had to do it on Earth. But yeah, it's one of the best, one of the things that Bryan Singer did is he gave all those, Wolverine gets his moment where he's the guy. And we see the moment where Nightcrawler, they do 5 of those scenes in a row and they're all pretty good.
Yeah. And that scene when Magneto comes out and he's just walking with all the guns behind him and he's like throwing metal at people. And like when he broke that one guy's arm, like the guy attacks and he's like shoots the piece of metal in his hand and he's like, snap your arm. And he like throws him off to the side. I'm like, that was the most Magneto moment that Magneto's ever had in this franchise. And you butchered this movie.
And the movie and then the movie that was before that, was that the Apocalypse movie?
Yes, and that was another one that was neutered by the studio wanting to tone it down a bit. But also, I don't think Bryan Singer, I had my issues with him at the X-Men as a whole, but this was like, I don't know, man.
It's unwatchable. His accent that movie, I think I've only seen it once. It's not good.
It has some moments that are great, and it has some moments that I'm like, why is this a thing? Why?
Oh, it felt like kids playing cosplay. Some of the stuff in that was like, man, what happened?
Yeah. But such is life. Hopefully Marvel MCU was able to top the best that Fox did, because I've said it before, and you and I saw the X-Men movies when we were younger. Those were our movies. I remember I think we left school. The moment school ended, we dropped in our car and went straight to the theater to see X-Men 2. And it was like so packed that you and I had to sit in like different rows and like disjointed. And there was like 3 other people that were with us. And we're like, the theater's packed, but apparently there's 5 seats in here somewhere. So everyone split up and find a seat. And that's what we did, because that movie was so good at the time.
Yeah, because X-Men 1, people didn't know if it was going to be good or not. My uncle took me to it. Did you see it with your family?
I saw it with one of my friends after school. I think we were in middle school at the time.
Yeah, we were a little bit younger.
We were like 8th grade when that came out. Like we were right at the end of middle school. And a buddy of mine was like really into the X-Men cartoon. And so was I. And he's like, let's go see it. And I'm like, all right, cool. And we saw it and we're like, okay, this can happen now, right? Like we're here. It's happening.
X-Men 2 is one of the best movie-going experiences I've ever had.
Yeah.
The audience was jazzed. Everyone was excited. When you see the Phoenix in the ocean at the very end, everyone was like, yeah! It was such a great experience. Yeah. And then the letdown of X-Men 3.
X-Men 3. I remember you and I saw that.
We saw it by the beach. We saw it by
We went down to the Regal Theater after we went to our comic shop. We bought some comics. We went and saw the movie. And I remember we were sitting there watching it. And as soon as the title card came up, you like leaned over and you're like, that is the most comic book looking title card I've ever seen. And I don't think it works for this movie. And that was how we started the movie. Your first critique of the movie was like, this isn't going to work.
I remember Beast is one of my favorite mutants. And I remember seeing Beast on screen being like, oh no, they ruined him. we got Fraser Beast and he doesn't want to be here. And yeah, that movie was the great movie that never was.
Yeah, and there was so many things. I mean, we can definitely talk about it one of these days. We can do a whole show on what Bryan Singer's X-Men 3 was going to be, because that movie was supposed to have Sentinels. That movie was supposed to have Sigourney Weaver as the White Queen. It was supposed to have a lot of stuff. But he got tapped for Superman, and Fox didn't want to wait 6 months for him to make X-Men 3. They wanted to do it right then. So they let him go, and they hired Brett Ratner, whose only claim to fame was Rush Hour at the time.
X-Men 3 is awful. How long between X-Men 3? Well, then you get the Wolverine Origins.
3 years later, then we got the X-Men Origins Wolverine, and that movie. I feel like that movie should have been literally that 5-minute montage of his like origin going through all the wars. That should have been the movie.
Yeah.
Not what we got. Should have given us a whole 2-hour movie of him traveling almost quantum leap style, going from war to war and just hating life. And then at the end of the movie, he gets picked up by Stryker and joins Weapon X. Like, that should have been the movie's ending.
And then how long did it take before we got...
It was like 2 or 3 years later that they gave us First Class. And the First Class gave me hope for the X-Men again, because that movie is so much better than it has any right to be. And to this day, I will say X-Men First Class is probably better than 90% of the MCU.
Yeah, it hits a ton of different... It hits a ton... It's not only a good movie, it's also a good superhero movie.
Oh,
it's also a good... I mean, I guess it's big little stuff. You know what I mean? But it's very good.
And then they I mean, Days of Future Past was good. It was decent. The road cut was vastly superior to the theatrical cut. But Bryan Singer, again, showing his dislove for anything comic accurate, decided to redesign everybody and kill off a bunch of characters he didn't like. But that ending moment where Magneto comes out to break out Emma Frost and says, "You can call me Magneto," and he's got the red and purple on, and it's actually red and purple and not burgundy like Bryan Singer likes to keep doing.
Mm-hmm.
That moment when you see the pan up to his helmet and it's the comic book helmet, that was like, that was one of the greatest moments in the theater for me for a long time. I was like, there it is. X-Men, Magneto, perfect. And then they changed him again. Bryan Singer wanted to make him more like the other Magneto and didn't want to, it just jumped right into, here's the half cape, here's the burgundy. Let's take that helmet, but let's like break it up a little bit. Like he's been upset with it. And like, he just completely butchered the character just visually. I mean, the character depiction was fantastic.
Yeah, but that's because Michael Fassbender pulls so much weight in those movies. He just, like that garbage scene where they go to his weird farm.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I was watching that, I'm like, I'm only watching this because Michael Fassbender is here right now being just doing amazing things. Yeah. He pulls so much weight in those movies.
He really does. And that scene where he goes in X-Men First Class, where he is at the bar in Argentina.
Did that movie come out before Inglourious Bastards? Because I feel like
no, it did. It had to have.
Because that scene feels like something Tarantino gave them.
Oh my God.
So good.
I loved how he just walked in there, started speaking to them in German, and he's like, "I don't have a name. Here's my tattoo." And they're like, "Oh God." And he's like, "Let's finish my beer. And now I'm going to murder you all." And I'm like, this was such a great scene. And the music, such a well done scene.
See, that was, it's funny that we're talking about genre here, and that movie wasn't a genre movie, but they put it back in the 1960s, so they had like a weird cap on it. And we talked about, Marvel doing scary stuff. It really blows my mind. They got to make content for everybody, and it blows my mind that they haven't taken one of these franchises and upped the maturity on it yet. I don't understand why.
Yeah, so my thought is that when Marvel eventually adapts the X-Men, you need to do it as a period piece. Like, do what X-Men did with Fox. Allow Magneto to be a young Jewish boy. Allow Professor X to be an Oxford-trained professor and all that stuff. Allow him all these things, but allow it to be in the 60s and the 70s. And then cut to the present-day X-Men, where Jean Grey is now leading the school, where you have the new X-Men team. Allow the X-Men to have aged. Like, give fans their comic accurate version of the X-Men, and then do what you want with it after you've aged it to present day.
Would you change the original X-Men team and not do Jean Grey, Scott Summers, and instead of doing that, maybe just have Morph? Just have some guys that don't, we see a picture on the wall and they're all smiling, but like, unfortunately, we lost them in the big war in 92.
So what they should do, and my pitch has always been, have them introduce the X-Men as his original team. You have Angel, you have Hairless Beast, you have Cyclops, you have Jean. That's it.
Iceman.
Right? Iceman, yes. You have that team. Then you do like a flashback montage, show them evolve or whatever. Have Beast be a teacher or something in the present day stuff. But then you introduce like the giant size X-Men team. Give us the modern day heroes with Colossus, with Thunderbird, with Storm. Like, you give us those characters like they did in the comics when they rebooted the comics and they gave us a whole different team. Do that. Or you can even do something like they did in the show X-Men Evolution, right? Where Magneto is still Jewish and from that time, but he wanted to elongate his life because he was getting old. So he finds the super soldier serum from Captain America, and he uses it on himself to make him young again, essentially. And then you can have it like by the time Magneto met Professor X, Magneto was already 70, but he'd use the serum to keep himself young. Do something like that.
They've done so much time traveling stuff. What if you had old man Ian McKellen comes back, forces America Chavez to pop open a portal, right? Or even some time traveling thing. Goes back to his younger self and he goes, hey, you don't know this yet, but I'm going to tell you what's going to happen over the next 50 years. And now I need you to go conquer the world for me. I'm too old and can't do it. So I'm going to tell you what to do. All of our dreams can come true. Like just have right. Like any way you want to pop a portal open. You can make anybody Magneto. You just have to justify it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the wonders of the multiverse, like that Marvel can have their fun with it. They can have their cake, they can eat it too, and it's going to be fantastic. And I just feel like right now with fans want the classic X-Men. They don't want the reimagining yet. So give them a classic one, give them the period piece classic X-Men, and then get weird with the multiverse. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think it speaks back to this leaked list. Maybe we should wait to see where they want to go before we critique them and let them build up their visions, because here again are all the hallmarks that come up all the time. Directors getting their visions taken away from them, stuff being preemptive by fan expectations. What's funny is there is going to be a lot of expectations around what they do with X-Men and the Fantastic Four. And I almost, it feels like a losing endeavor, to be honest. I feel like whatever they do, people aren't going to be happy with it.
I 100% agree. And I think what's going to end up happening is that fans want what they want, but they want it now. And
we don't even have the time to do, we should do a whole episode of what does the MCU do with Wolverine? Like, how do we, you know what I mean? How do you have all of this and not have Wolverine? And he's not even on the table yet.
He's not, none of them are on the table because Disney decided not to pay out the contracts of all the actors that are currently in those roles. So they have to wait until those contracts expire before they can reuse those roles. So by the time we get the X-Men into the MCU, it'll be after Secret Wars, after the big grand reboot that's going to happen with Secret War. So we'll get the X-Men when the MCU is rebooted. That's when we'll get the X-Men.
Because that's how they justify them being in the world.
Yeah.
Great.
They're going to reboot the timeline. They're going to reboot the world. They're going to recast a bunch of people. And in the process, they're going to be like, oh, mutants were here the whole time.
Right.
And that's how they're going to do it. They're not going to pull a Miss Marvel on us and the 11th hour, babe. By the way, she's not an Inhuman. She's a mutant.
Well, listen, Taylor, one hill to die on at a time. Okay, we can't start lambasting Miss Marvel yet.
All right. But we will see a great reboot in the next 5 to 10 years. Not even that. 5 years, we'll see the reboot when Secret Wars is out, and then at that point, we'll get new Iron Man, new Captain America. We'll get new all of those things, and people won't care anymore because the MCU will become like James Bond, and they'll just, this story ran its course. Let's reboot and do a new big ass story. And there we go.
We're pretty close to that now, but yeah, I totally hear you.
And by that point, they won't have to retell everyone's origins because people will be like, oh, I know Doctor Strange. Whatever. Same-ish origins. We're good.
Right.
And that's what's going to happen. They'll give us a brand new rebooted MCU with all the stuff we want in it, and they won't tell a single origin story because you still have the last timeline's origins to watch.
Right. And just know that, like, oh, it was my Aunt May that died, Spider-Man. Yeah.
Boom. But anyways, thank you everyone for joining us and listening to us rant. If you want to support what we do and help us keep the lights on and keep doing this every week, patreon.com/theculturednerd. Big thank you to our current Patreon supporters helping us support the channel. Again, my name is Taylor Murphy. I've been your host. My co-host, Michael Santel. We will be with you this time every single week, unless some random act of God occurs, and we can't be. But before I close, I got some stuffs that I got stickers finally. So I got our logos.
What are you going to do with them stickers?
I'm going to send them to people. So
that's great.
If you're a Patreon supporter, you will get a sticker. If you want to just donate separately from Patreon, by all means, donate whatever you feel that you can, and I'll send you a sticker. I actually have on our Twitter account, on the main Twitter page profile, there is a little button where you can tip us right here in the top, little money sign. If you want to throw us a few shekels and say, hey, I like what you're doing, but I'm not going to support your subscription, by all means, do that. Send me your address, and I'll send you some stickers, some support, some love and support. But thank you all for joining us. If you're on your TV, scan that QR code, and we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Tebe. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.